Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in the first session of today. We have more than 650 people, participants, joining us right now. So I'm going to promise you a very fruitful and insightful discussion with respectable speakers who will be discussing about how the fintech initiatives to support Indonesia's economic recovery. As we know, the COVID pandemic has changed the way people live, and Indonesia has officially stepped in the economic recession. And once again, rapid digitization in the financial services, including increasing levels of fintech adoption in Indonesian society, is expected to grow and help the economy to recover. So, what are the initiatives? So, we have all the speakers here this morning. The first is Karania Dharma Saputra, Secretary General Indonesia Fintech Association or AFPEC, and also a president director of OVO and co-founder and CEO of Bareksa. And also Adrian Gunadi, Chairman Indonesia Fintech Lenders Association or AFPI, co-founder and CEO of Investry. Mas Herman Wijaya, Chief Executive Officer of Toko Score, and Ronald Wijaya, Chairman of IFSE, co-founder and CEO of Etis. Gentlemen, good morning. Very nice to see you all this morning. We're up and running. I'll start with Mascarania. So Mascarania, what are the initiatives, probably programs that AFTEC and your company has implemented in order to support the economy during the pandemic?
Hi, Andini. Thank you. Yeah, so I think in my view, the most important fintech initiative in helping government toward our national economic recovery, I think we need to mention Prakerja initiative. I think this is for me, despite all the criticism, right, despite all the inputs, I think this is a very historic initiative. So with Prakerja, I think Indonesia now for the first time has a centralized and digital national platform to manage and to distribute social aid. And I think why this is really important. I think the issue is we understand that in every in the history of the how we disperse social aid, right? BLT in Pak SBY era and etc. I think we have been facing what we call it as the intermediary issue or the middleman issue, right? So the issue is always how we validate and how we ensure that the social fund distributed by government can receive directly uh, to the the citizens that already validated.
Right.
So now by utilizing the digital platform, the financial technology, and then now I think we've successfully attacked this issue. So for the first time in the social aid history in Indonesia, now one by one Indonesian citizen who is eligible, right, to receive and to enroll to this program, they can register directly, right, without any filter, without any middleman, to this platform, and then this platform will validate the registrants, and then after they are validated, and then the platform collaborating with the banks and also the e-money companies like OVO, GoPay, Link
Yeah.
Aja, Dana, and then distribute the social aid directly to one by one the Indonesian citizen who is eligible to receive this fund. So I think, and then if we see all the metrics and all the parameters, I think we could see a significant improvement of how technology platform can manage and can deliver the social aid program much more efficient and effective
Yes.
compared to when we did this manually. Thank you.
Right. As always, the devil is in the details, right? I guess it admitted
Correct.
with technology, it admitted the devil in the details itself. And if I'm not mistaken, they gain more participants, we're talking about Prakerja. But I want to talk more about Bareksa though. So how is your outreach now? So how are you doing during the pandemic? What's the outreach? Please share.
Yeah, I think this is also another interesting story. Yeah. So when first time when the pandemic hit our country, right? So in March, and then the pandemic was announced as a national disaster, right? So at that time, as a co-founder and the CEO, I think, wow, that was the end of Bareksa because the economy crashed, the capital market crashed. Who's going to invest their money, right? But I'm so grateful. I think my assumption was false.
Right.
So if we compare between March and now, all the metrics going up. So the number of investors, right? The value of AUM is the asset under management. The frequency of transaction is going up. Like I think we are following the path of
Mm.
China's e-investment. So I think this is not only good for Bareksa, I believe. I think this is now we are seeing that in new normal, we are seeing the a significant growth of the e-investment and the retail investors. And if we see this in macro level, I think this is really important.
Right.
If we can grow even further our retail investors, I think this will be a strong foundation to this a more stable uh, capital market in Indonesia and also the financial world.
Right. So it created an opportunity, I guess, with the pandemic, right, to grow, fintech to
Correct,
grow.
correct.
Okay, so I would like to proceed to our next speaker, Mas Adrian, my good friend, Mas Adrian. Mas Adrian, okay, let's talk about
Morning, Andini.
AFPI. Morning. So, what are the initiatives or programs, I guess, of AFPI and your company, Investri, have implemented in order to support the economy during this pandemic?
Sure. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, Pak Kar, Pak Ronald, Pak Herman. Obviously, this is quite a very relevant session that we're having. And to kick off, I think the Indonesian FinTech Summit to basically exhibit, I think, what Pak Kar has indicated, how FinTech has played a role in this pandemic. And I think we all realize that this pandemic was slightly different compared to the crisis of 98, compared to the crisis of 2008, obviously because of the pandemic itself. And I think one contrast that I see for myself, based on what I've gone through 98, 2008, when I was in banking, actually the small, medium enterprise has been hit quite hard. And this is some interesting statistics that I picked up through our discussions with Mandiri Institute recently. It says that about 66% of SMEs are still operating in a restricted manner, given the pandemic, given some areas are still on a lockdown. Even Jakarta is still on a limited lockdown. And amongst about 40 to 50% or 45% have indicated that they only have cash flow for the remaining 3 months, right? So I think these are some key points or statistics that we see that the SMEs were hit hard during the pandemic. So I think another aspect that we also highlighted was the fact that they are seeking working capital solutions to relieve this cash flow issue. And also, we found, based on the survey that was done by Mandiri, about 57% of the respondents are actually looking at digital solutions as a means to not only access capital, but also as a means to operate their business, because many of them are working from home, many of their staff are working from home. So now they're being digitized or being forced to be digitized. And I think this is very relevant that the SMEs are looking at this pandemic to accelerate this digitalization. which is very important, right? And so I think the AFPI, or Indonesian Fintech Lending Association, we are an association consisting of 156 fintech lending platforms that are registered and licensed through OJK. And I think if you look at the demographics within the 156, there's about 40% are focusing on the small, medium, or productive loans. And I think what we have seen in terms of the trend, you look at the number or total cumulative loans that we have originated during the year, it is a growth of 122%. And it now stands at about $12 billion of total loans that have been dispersed. And if you look at the outstanding, it is at around $1 billion, or a growth of roughly about 27% year on year. So what that is indicating is, despite the pandemic, despite the conditions of the economic recessions, fintech lending players are still facilitating or supporting the SMEs in terms of the loan working capital solution, because we understand this is challenging time for the SMEs. And again, the challenge of the SMEs to seek formal financing from banks remains a challenge, especially at these times.
Right.
So I think that is how we have played a role in terms of the industry-wide, that if you look at the numbers, it is still double-digit growth despite the pandemic, and relatively been able to manage the NPL level as well. So that also highlights the importance of managing the growth as well as the risk. Now, for Investwe ourselves, we're slightly fortunate. The growth, again, slightly higher compared to the industry. We're growing at about 135% year on year. We've dispersed close to about $250 million over the past 3 quarters, and still maintain a healthy delinquency rate above 90 days at percent, right? So I think what's important we have differentiated is the fact that we are supporting a lot of SMEs that are combating COVID. So we see increase in support on SMEs related to the health sector, related to the telecommunication sector, because network usage bandwidth has increased. We're also increasing exposure to SMEs that are supporting the logistic and primary needs, consumer goods. That still remains a resilient sector. So we have had the benefit of focusing on ecosystems that are supporting these resilient industries. And as a result, Investwe, we are also deploying the Government Relief Fund, or PEN, Pemulihan Ekonomi Nasional. So we've disbursed close to about $5 million of PEN, which we started in August just of last month, right? So we're helping, we're playing a role in contributing to the recovery of the SME. And I think one unique aspect that we are different is obviously credit scoring. And I think Herman will talk a little bit about it, because I think the challenge that remains when you talk about government distribution, government relief program, are we targeting the right SMEs?
Right.
What are the credit profile of the SMEs, and can you validate the data?
Right.
Because just frankly speaking, data remains a problem when you talk about SMEs. And so I think this is one advantage that fintech has in terms of utilizing alternative credit scoring to assess the credit worthiness of the SME, because we all have to understand that it's not just about government relief, but how do you mitigate the risk? And I think this is hopefully through this pandemic will accelerate digitization and I would say the entire data management of SMEs in Indonesia.
Yeah, it is fascinating, because you said that basically you put trust on these SMEs, right? At the time where they need it the most, but at the same time, there's a loophole of data, which to make sure that you're giving it to the right people. So, but I guess now, based on what you're saying, the trust is bigger. What is happening on the ground?
Yes, correct. I think it's the way that we're using alternative data And that's, I think, one of the key advantages of fintech companies looking at alternative data as a means to credit score these SMEs. So despite the fact that there is a lack of robust data, then, you know, as a startup company, we need to be creative. We need to work together with other digital ecosystems. And perhaps later Herman can share, you know, how, you know, data from SMEs that are selling online can be used as a proxy to do alternative credit score, or SMEs that are supplying to the government, for example. I mean, those are data points that, you know, perhaps traditional financial institutions will not or do not pick up, but that's where the advantage of fintech, of having, you know, AI alternative credit scoring. And I think it's a means to make this SMEs more transparent, more visible, and obviously more bankable. And I think this is where, you know, we play a role in the recovery of the SMEs in Indonesia.
Okay, so I proceed to Mas Herman. Before I ask Mas Herman, I would like to ask all the participants who would like to ask questions. You can see there's a Q&A box. Put your questions there, put your name, and then afiliasinya dari mana. If you don't, kalau misalnya pengen pakai bahasa Indonesia, that's fine. I can translate it for you. And then please mention mau ditanyakan ke siapa speakernya. I don't have much time untuk nanya ke semua speaker, so please choose wisely. Siapa yang ingin ditanyakan. So Mas Herman, your name has mentioned a lot by Mas Adrian. So I guess how significant is fintech and digital financial services potential in accelerating the recovery, economic recovery?
So first of all, good morning to everyone. Thank you again for Mbak Andini to actually moderating this. Good morning as well to all of the distinguished panelists as well, Pak Adrian, Pakar, Pak Ronald. I think I love the question. What initiative and the program the company has implemented? Right? I think let's take a look at the landscape at this moment. I really 100% agree with Pak Adrian. I think enabling UMKM, enabling SME, enabling customer during this pandemic is something very important. This is a time that we never ever seen before. However, we can actually see it as a pandemic, but we can also see it as an opportunity as well. Being in a Tokopedia group, we are actually have a bit more of a visibility towards what's actually happening on the market. Despite the pandemic, we actually found a lot of excitement actually in the market as well. I mean, since January, we actually get 2 million additional SME joining our platform, right? And the reason is because now going into digital becoming no longer an optional thing, but people are actually moving to that, right? I think whatever that, I think this is where the strength of Indonesia, where we are during this kind of situation, we always come together and how we can actually support each other, right? I think when we look at what every digital player has been doing, from the Pakar in OVO, from Pak Adrian in industry, from everybody else, a lot of marketplace, they are actually trying to actually revive the economy, right? I think one of the things that a lot of marketplaces are doing are basically reaching out to all of these merchants and basically help them, giving them more exposure. For example, in Tokopedia, we basically had, you know, a special program like bersama dalam satu dalam kopi, where we are at the start of pandemic, a lot of cafe are basically a bit of get the impact. So we actually say, hey, you know what? Why don't we basically sell it in the digital platform? We basically help the fashion industry as well. We partner with Jack Cloth. We partner with the largest book seller in Indonesia called Big Bad Wolf. We actually did our first Big Bad Wolf event back in March. The thing is that I felt that everybody has been doing their job, but the thing is that at this moment, the access to financial enablement, aka digital lending, cash flow, is very important. Now we can actually talk to every bank, we can actually talk to every digital lender like Pak Adrian and everyone else. They will say one thing: I wish we could have more data points so that we can actually disperse the loan faster, more effective, more accurate, and cheaper. I mean, we cannot always look at the mature market. Wow, they have a FICO score, they have a better score. Yeah, I mean, take a look at it from the angle of what opportunity we can have, right? What sort of strength point that we have. We, as the 4th largest market in the world, we have a very unique opportunity where we have a lot of strength in the alternative credit scoring data point. This is actually one of the reasons that we basically really invested in SDB, Semangat Digital Bangsa, where we are trying to build what we call Toko Score. Toko Score hopefully become the alternative credit score, a complementary credit score to actually enable digital lender and the traditional lender to be able to make decision faster, better. So what we are doing is we are actually assessing and providing indication of the borrower risk profiles through e-commerce behavior, right?
Okay.
Either it will be the purchase patterns. If you are talking about customer, we can look at the purchase pattern perspective. We can look at how they are spending, right? The other part as well, if you are a seller or merchant, we can actually see how good they are, if they are to the customer, how good of their customer service they are. We know their books, we know how much transaction they have, what sort of transaction they do, how much purchasing do they do. I think hopefully that with that we can actually build a complementary ability to enable the digital and traditional lender. So by the end of this year, we are going to release our version 3 of the Toko Score. Yes, we have been doing two versions already. And hopefully in the version 3, we are actually adding 30% more data thickness. And the goal is that we can actually increase 50 to 60% of the predictability. And we are hoping that, you know, through technology, right? Through technology, advanced technology that we have, machine learning, data science and everything else, we are able to help the digital and the traditional lenders to disperse the money faster to our SME and customers.
Okay, Mas Herman, how big is the outreach now throughout the pandemic of Toko Score?
So we at the Toko Score, we don't actually go directly into the customer. We are basically partnering with the digital lender and the traditional lender. Okay. So far, we are able to try out our V1 and V2 scores to our traditional, to few traditional and digital lenders. And so far, they have been using it as a complementary data point to help them to disperse fund faster.
I see. Okay. Well, I can shamelessly say that I've become a platinum member of Tokopedia since the pandemic. And
thank you.
It's basically one of the most top-rated app on my phone, other than WhatsApp. WhatsApp probably number 5. Number 1 is Tokopedia, just so you know. So, okay, we have questions coming in. Sekali lagi, Bapak Ibu sekalian, mohon ditaruh di Q&A box, bukan di chat box. Sekali lagi di Q&A box, kemudian pertanyaannya namanya siapa, diafiliasinya dari mana, kemudian ingin ditanyakan ke siapa. Itu harus jelas sekali supaya kita bisa filter pertanyaannya dan sesuai dengan discussion flow. Jangan ditaruh di chat, kita akan buka chatnya, tapi hanya khusus di Q&A boxnya. Okay, we proceed to the next speaker, Mas Ronald Wijaya. Mas Ronald, mungkin you can share how about the programs or initiative from AFSI and also from EPIS. What are the programs that you've been implemented to support the economic recovery?
Yeah, thank you, Mbak Dini, and good morning. Good morning as well to all the distinguished speakers, Pakar, Pak Adrian, and also Pak Herman. I'm speaking on behalf of my association, APSI. At least I can highlight 3 main initiatives that we have been doing in this pandemic situation, which are number 1 is Qardul Hasan. In Sharia, there's a lot of products, right? For this, Hasan is basically a financing with only capital return. So this is basically like a more social, but impacting to the SMEs directly. And number 2 is more like a hybrid financing, which is a combination between the commercial and also social financing. This combination will allow a more affordable return from the SMEs to the repayment. We are looking for several sectors in this matter. Or the one that we have done is actually finance an Islamic boarding school in Majalengka, which will become a pilot project to 28,000 other Islamic boarding school. So if this succeeds, then we can implement, and I think it's something we can really potentially see the growth in the Islamic boarding school sector. Wow. And last but not least is, of course, in Sharia, we are always concerned about the social. And at the moment, we are having this initiative to basically digitizing the rural orphanage from this social, because I guess in this situation, everybody more concerned about their hereafter. So they are more looking for this social initiative, right? And I think to help orphanage to have a better education, what do you call it? Put them into a more digitizing online education, it will be a big supporting for the economy. Thank you.
Right. Maybe you can also share about ETHIS. What are the initiatives or programs that you've been doing throughout the pandemic? Yeah.
The number two initiative that I mentioned earlier for the development of Islamic boarding school is under ETHIS initiative. Because
Okay.
on infrastructure and also property. So what we did was we are financing with a more affordable for the Islamic boarding school in Majalengka. In the, I mean, I'm combining between the commercial investors and also social investors, right? And this is to build their new building that can cater the next tranche because during the pandemic, as everybody learning from home,
right?
So it's the perfect to build all this infrastructure.
That was actually my question because now the trend is sort of like learning from home, whereas now you're building a boarding school. So I'm surprised that it's still lucrative, you know?
Yes, it is indeed. Because we are looking at their data as well. At the moment, in the other region, they still, having a growth in terms of their new enrollment. Everybody expect that after the vaccine is found and distributed, I think the panic is will go much lesser. People can adapt the new normal more adaptive.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so we go to the Q&A. This is from Daniar, a tech lawyer, to all panelists. Yeah, so nanti start with Mas Kar and then Mas Adrian and so on. In your opinion, why many blockchain-based products, both for currency and utility token, in relation with fintech, started their registration in Singapore or other ASEAN countries? One, is that true? And why is it happening? Whether there is an unmet demand of digital talent, of ease of doing business. And do you think, this is a recent question, Omnibus Law allow you to ease in starting business than before? And what do you expect from it? Mas Kar, silakan.
Wow, this is a very tough and political question. So, yeah, of course, I think I think blockchain is I think offering great opportunity, right, to grow the fintech industry, in which now we are seeing in the very early stage to grow further. I think there is no doubt on that, and I think the challenge is how I think the current regulation can, maybe need to uh, adjust to that needs, right? So on omnibus law, well, I need to be very careful to answer this question, but I think despite all the the debate, the discussion, right? So I think in the investor perspective, we need to admit that again, yeah, despite all the debate, the discussion, and we need to monitor this omnibus law, very closely, not to to create uh, negative impact to our laborers and workers. But on the other side, I think we all understand that this country needs a competitive labor law, right? And I think that is really important to attract more and more investors coming to this country. And also, I think that is also very relevant when we talk about the fintech industry in Indonesia. And another thing that I think we need to admit, if we check the I think there was a interesting development in our capital market. I think since 2 weeks ago, after the omnibus law signed, I think the capital market, uh, you know, uh, showed a positive trend, right? Showing that I think most of the investors in Indonesian capital market is welcoming
Yeah.
this omnibus law very positively. Thank you.
All right. Mas Adrian?
I just wanted to probably add on to what has been mentioned by Pakar. From a regulatory perspective, you talk about blockchain, you talk about crypto. In Indonesia, obviously, that has not been regulated yet. So maybe that is the answer to the first question: why are many blockchain or cryptocurrency players basing out of Singapore? Because the fact of the matter is, Indonesia has not regulated yet, right?
Yeah.
So it's once there is no regulatory framework, then obviously it makes sense for you to operate out of a different jurisdiction. Unlike businesses as fintech lending or payments, credit scoring as a service through OJK fintech office or the OJK fintech support, basically, or NBank Indonesia, I think it's pretty much clear.
Right.
But blockchain and crypto still in development in terms of the regulatory framework. So perhaps that answers the first question. And the second question with regards to omnibus, I tend to agree with what Pakar has mentioned. Definitely, times are changing. Obviously, if you know, industries are changing and businesses are changing rapidly as well. I think um, uh, the labor law also needs to adapt. I think it's more of that adaptation of new economy, and obviously how it can always be relevant and make Indonesia an attractive hub for investment. How to increase productivity. I think it's also important to mention that one of the points that is emphasized is labor productivity, and also in terms of a fair compensation and benefit. So I think those are some of the things that obviously we hope, obviously as entrepreneurs, that it will enable to stimulate increased productivity, which in the end will have a direct impact on Indonesia's economy.
Mas Herman?
Yeah, I think Pakar and Pak Adrian answered it very, very well. I think from our side, we trust and support the government in basically doing this particular, in basically dealing with this two situation. We really understand that also that it still requires some modification and further regulated and everything else. So we are going to just monitor that and do that. But I just want to answer a bit on the other part of the question with regard to the digital talent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a background of technology before, so I think I just want to say that as the fourth largest market in the world, I think I'm really, really grateful to see that Indonesia is not only a market, but also Indonesia is really growing and building the digital talent. When you look at all of the, I will say, unicorn in Indonesia, a lot of them are actually built in Indonesia, right? Look at Tokopedia, look at Ovo, look at Gojek, look at Invest3, look at everything, right? They are actually built by anak bangsa gitu loh, by the Indonesian. I think yes, we are still we are the fourth largest. Of course, when you want to look at and comparing to the other market like US, India, we might still be behind. However, when you look at the steep growth on what we have been building, what Indonesian has been building, Indonesian talent, Indonesian people has been building in the last few years, and the growth that we have is actually pretty phenomenal. I think we have the while it's still a huge opportunity, I think all of us need to play a very important role in also not only growing the market, but also helping the growing the digital talent. Thank you.
Interesting. Mas Ronald, silakan.
Well, I guess the answer are all already taken, but I guess what I can add on is basically I think the key is to believe in our government. We trust that our government will decide the best for our society, for our citizens, etc. I guess from my own background, being invested from overseas, again, everybody say the same thing. Basically, Indonesia is very big potential, but whether the trust is there, I think at this point, in Sharia or in Islam, we have this term which is Samina Watona. You just follow your leader. I think this is to the Republic of Indonesia. Thank you.
Very well. Trust. That is important. Okay. Next question is for Mas Adrian from USF. He would like to ask you about your statement before about being forced to be digitalized. How this forcing act can make a positive effect? Because usually, if something being forced, not as willingly, the impact can be negative. And all other speakers, you may jump in. Let's make it like a fluid discussion, yeah? So please feel free to jump in. Silakan.
Yeah, so I think it's actually more of regulation that makes SMEs have to think digitally because of the PSBB. Obviously, for example, if I sell cendol, right? And how can people come to my store if they are not allowed to go outside of their home, right? So I think that's one example that we see that small businesses are now leveraging or using technology to sell their products online, right? Because people technically cannot go to the store. I mean, you have to work, stay at home. So that is where we see it's actually more of a push because of regulation, because of the PSBB. Then obviously there are restrictions, right, on travel, restrictions on going outside of your home. So basically, it is more of a less contact economy. So in a less contact economy, then you have to think, right? You have to be creative, and as entrepreneurs, as I would say digital native, I think this is where we need to also be creative and innovate. And I think for small, medium enterprises, SMEs, you need to survive, right? I mean, if no one's going to come to your restaurant for 2 months, how are you going to pay salary? How are you going to keep the rent, right? So it is about survival. And I said, if the SMEs don't do anything, the average statistic based on the research from Mandiri Institute, it says 3 months cash flow. And I think that is what we want to avoid, bankruptcies, which leads to unemployment.
Right.
That is a detrimental effect on Indonesia's economy. So because of this PSBB, because of this restriction, then you have to innovate. You have to see how you can still manage and operate the business, because as entrepreneurs, that's what you need to do. How do you manage your runway, and how do you navigate through this crisis? But at the same time, we see this as opportunity. And going back to that cendol seller, once they're online, then they have more access, right? I mean, you need your cendol every now and then. So basically, I think that is things that once they go digital, then they say, hey, I have more customer base. And then what's important is the data, right? I mean, then we know how much cendol is he selling on a weekly basis, on a quarterly basis. Then say, hey, why don't we provide working capital so they can grow the cendol business? So that's an example how I think being digital will enable small, medium enterprises to actually scale their business.
Interesting. Anyone want to jump in? Mas Ronald? I see you unmuting. No? Okay. Okay, but the main question is, are you team cendol dicampur or enggak? That's also a very distinguished question, It's important debate in this country. Tim aduk atau enggak, right?
I'm the campur type.
All right. Okay. So the next question is for Mas Ronald. Mas Ronald, this is in bahasa dari Fauzi Bank Kalsel, divisi usaha syariah. Bagaimana tindakan bisnis syariah dalam mengimplementasikan bisnis digital sesuai syariah pada market share di pasar-pasar tradisional, sementara di masa pandemi sangat membatasi gerak bisnis syariah?
Well, I think that's a very solid challenge that we are facing at the moment. But again, the idea of innovation is to come with the solution on that. I guess the outreach for the local market or pasar basah in that area is something that we need to partnership with, like the banks do with the Laku Pandai. Again, it's the matter of infrastructure. Again, once we build our sufficient infrastructure, then all these things can be catered. But for now, I think what we have is to do, like a partnership or collaboration with other people or with the other stakeholders to serve that area.
Okay, very well. Next question for Mas Herman from Pak Fani Pristama. Selain data Tokopedia, data alternatif apa yang digunakan dalam Toko Store? Kemudian dari Batara untuk Toko Store ini ada pertanyaannya adalah, sebentar, saya langsung aja di rendeng ya. Apakah platform borrowing hanya untuk toko-toko yang sudah terdaftar di Tokopedia atau ditawarkan secara terbuka kepada UMKM? Dan bagaimana bentuk hubungannya dengan lender? Apakah jadi P2P lending atau melalui Tokped?
Oke, saya jawab yang pertama dulu ya. Okay, so I think at the end of the day, we are a big believer that in order for us to be a mature technology company, we have to root it out based on the customer needs, right? So focus on consumer really, really important. So I think it's not a matter of what sort of data that we are going to have, but it's more like what sort of data point that we can further enable our friends in digital and traditional lenders to be able to disperse the money faster, to disperse the loan faster, more accurately, cheaper, and of course, more targeted. I'll give an example. A few years ago, we at Tokopedia, we opened a new business line called Mitra Tokopedia because we felt that there was basically a need to actually help our warung-warung owner, which is becoming the center of the villages. During that time, we also wanted to also come in and basically give them some financial enablement as well, because most of them are basically either underbanked or unbanked at all, right? They are basically cash-based and everything else. When we basically talk to them, they basically say, yeah, pa, but it's very, very hard to actually get loans simply because who can actually come in and everything else. But we need to actually have a capital in order for us to actually start getting more stuff and everything else. And very interesting that what we basically started learning based on our experience is that the way we basically look at how trustworthy they are is kind of different than how we normally use the normal method. The normal method is we look at, okay, let's take a look at their credit card, let's take a look at home loan, let's take a look at their past history payment, let's take a look whether they're always trying to max out their credit limit and everything else. But for them, I think it's kind of different, right? I mean, when we actually learn how trustworthy they are, is based on simple things. For example, do they have, sorry if I throw some brands here, do they have Coca-Cola refrigerator over there? Because if Coca-Cola refrigerator is there, that means that maybe this warung is trustworthy enough to the point that Coca-Cola is willing to actually put the refrigerator there. Is the place clean? Because highly likely when the place is neat and clean, highly likely the person are actually more having higher chances to actually pay back the loan and be responsible with the loan, right? Let's take a look at the transaction. Is the transaction really good? How good they are in basically buying and selling their stuff? How good they are in basically responding to the customers? I think based on that, we learned that it's not the matter of how many data that we basically have. It doesn't mean that SDB is only locked into Tokopedia data. Of course not, right? But I think Tokopedia itself as a marketplace, let's talk about just a marketplace, not just Tokopedia. As a marketplace in Indonesia, like Tokopedia, Shopee, Bukalapak, right? They have an amazing unique data point. Not only they have the merchant, the marketplace data, they have the digital bill payment data as well, like tax, utilities, their travel behavior, their payment, and everything else, in which hopefully if we are actually using it for good use, we can actually take it as an alternative data scoring. So I feel that yes, we are open. However, I feel that the data in the marketplace is yet to be saturated. Now, with regards to how does the SDB actually works, right? I think we don't actually work directly with the customers. We normally work primarily with the lender. Right. So the lender come to us, and the lender basically say, "Hey, I need an additional data, additional complementary data scoring." And basically, with just a phone and a phone number and then some details, we are going to look at in our data whether we actually have it or not. At this moment, if I'm not mistaken, we have about 18 million data already, user data. that we already quote unquote crunch and basically have the information. So is it gonna go grow more? Of course. Can we basically get more the merchant that's actually not in Tokopedia? Definitely. Are we there yet? No,
Mhm.
but we are definitely make it better.
All right.
I hope it makes.
Okay. Okay. So many questions coming in for all speakers to Pakar. Whether Indonesia is ready for anticipating foreign fintech players penetrating into Indonesian market. What is the mutual or appropriate type of collaboration arrangement with foreign entities? And do you agree that the government shall expand maximum ownership for foreign players? Mascot. And others, if you have an opinion, comment, please feel free to jump in.
Another tough question.
Always goes to you, Paka. Tough questions, yeah?
Yeah, and please help me, Pak Adrian and ini Pak Herman and Pak Ronald. So, yeah, I think ini ya, Andini. I think the facts. I think now, I think in fact, we are seeing that several big foreign fintech company, I think, is already in the market, right? And what we are seeing, because the fintech is a highly regulated area, and I think the pattern is all these big boys lah, usually
Mm.
seeking local partners, right? So I think this is a great opportunity for what Herman just mentioned. I think I think we are proud, yeah, as a nation, that we are seeing, like, Tokopedia, Investri, and also Pak Renault, and uh, that Indonesians have quite successfully to build and develop several unicorns, and I think now I believe that quite competitive enough, even in the regional level. So saying that, I think uh, we need also to admit that currently, yeah, the availability of the local funding is quite limited. And then, unfortunately, that because the fintech industry in Indonesia now is still at the very infancy stage, and then the room to grow is really huge, and then to grow this market further, we need aggressive capital, and then we need to rely on the foreign investors. So how we see this? In my view, I think we need to see this as with a pride, right? I think our local unicorns can attract and can garner a strong trust from the big foreign investors. I think for me, this is national pride that we need to celebrate together. And I think this is really important, considering that if we see all the data and all the facts, I think all the fintech players in Indonesia, most of them developed and built by Indonesian, I think have contribute more and more significantly to financial inclusion and to the economic development. As I mentioned before, I think we are very proud seeing that all the big fintech and the e-commerce companies contribute significantly in uh, together with the government to develop a national platform like Prakerja. So, and then my last point, I think all who understand and study economics, I think very well aware that this country needs more and more FDI, right, foreign direct investment.
Mm.
And we heard from the BKPM, our investment board agency. Now we also see a similar data that the tech area is becoming more and more interesting to attract the FDI. So I think so. The key is, I think, thanks to OJK, BI, and Pak Jokowi's administration, and then we need to balance how we could attract more, even more, the foreign direct investment into our tech company, and then make sure that our tech companies contribute more and more to Indonesian economic development. So I think maybe that is my answer. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
anyone wants to comment? Yeah, silakan.
Yes, let me add on to what Pakar has mentioned. I think obviously we are quite fortunate that there is a strong foreign interest in the growing digital sector, whether it's fintech, whether it's e-commerce, logistics from foreign. But I think what I see that we also need to have a balanced approach in terms of the localization of these companies, because we also see how some need to follow the local rules and regulation. So it's not just copy paste from what they're doing outside of Indonesia and implementing it to Indonesia. That's one. I think there's always also need clear, I would say, parameters on whether the local partner also has control, whether they also have a board seat. So I think in terms of governance, it also needs to be clear what are the roles and responsibility of the local partner.
Right.
And third, I think it comes back also to data. I know that is why we from the association, from AFPI, from AFTEC are hopefully pushing that the bill on data protection, Undang-Undang PDP, will soon be issued, because I think that's also important. Data sovereignty is always important for any country. So as long as we're able to manage those three factors, I think that's also important when you look at foreign investments, especially in the technology space. And fourth, actually I forgot, is transfer of knowledge in terms of technology know-how, upskilling and reskilling the talent of Indonesia, I think is also important. The same, actually, we also have the experience ourselves, because we are operating also in Thailand and the Philippines, and they're also regulating it that way, in that we have to work with local partners. What are the roles of the local partners, responsibility, the rights also has to be clear. And so I think we always need local partners, because local partners have the domain knowledge, right? They understand Indonesian SMEs better than the others, or Philippine SMEs, they understand better. So I think that's the role where local partners play. And so I think having more of this clearance or guidance in terms of investment into the tech space is very important for our country.
Mas Herman, Mas Ronald, you want to add on? Shall we proceed to the next question? Yeah, we proceed to the next question. But gentlemen, just want to share with you an information that we have reached more than 1,000 participants right now for the session.
Wow.
And what is going on in the state of Georgia, we may need a recount, okay? Because this is never happening. Seriously. We need a recount for this.
So you just ruined my day, Andini.
No, it must be all the gentlemen here and all the political questions that are being thrown at you guys right now. So, okay, Mas Herman, this question is for you. You mentioned about big data. What infrastructures are required to develop the big data analytics? Furthermore, what are the challenges in developing the infrastructure? This is from Alfie from Credito. And others can also jump in.
That's a very big question, which I'm very happy to talk about. I think big data is, I think people use this jargon a lot, right? Big data, big data, big data. But I think big data is, we are talking about how we are basically able to understand the data that we have, right? Being able to mine it in a sense that to understand the customer needs. So let me give an example. So many times, many people are actually saying this. Oh yeah, we'll solve it using AI. We'll solve it using big data, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anything they say, we solve it using AI. I don't think that will ever happen, right? I think we have to first understand what sort of things that becoming the bottleneck. What is the customer problem space is. And using the customer problem space, then we're going it down, and we basically say what sort of data, what sort of solution we are actually thinking of building. And then now using the advanced technology, we have something like big data, in which before, when you basically say 1 + 1 = 2, because it's a mathematical thing, but when you ask Google 1 + 1 = 2, it's not because of formula, but it's because many people say 1 + 1 = 2. And I think that is using the power of big data. So I think how we build big data, basically, first of all, take a look at in your organization, right? So many times you actually have so many databases all over the place, right? How you can basically centralize it into one single data lake location, right? Clean it, deduplicate it, making it good, right? And then, but at the end of the day, it's not only just clean it and dedupe it. Imagine that you have a table, and the table you actually have a lot of envelope or a lot of paper and everything else.
Yeah.
How do you basically grab it together, synthesize it, summarize it, and put it into a more easier to grab data point, and that is big data. However, at the end of the day, if you don't know what the big data is used for, then it's going to be a general purpose big data, and I think it's going to be you will not be able to have an effective big data unless you really understand. For example, the needs. For example, for our credit scoring, we know for sure that the needs is to enable our digital lender and traditional lender to be able to give data point to our customer, better data point to our customer and our merchant. So our big data is geared towards having that as the final outcome, right? And yeah.
Okay.
I think hopefully, I know there's a very big questions. I'll be more than happy to connect with you later on. You can reach me on my LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to answer that. But yeah, hopefully that give a high level understanding. Maybe anyone else?
Anyone else want to add? No? Okay. So next question from Mr. Iwan Muhammad to Mas Ronald. Is there any initiative program by Fintech Syariah Indonesia for SME focusing in APD and medical masks, I guess this is because there's a demand for it.
Yeah, of course we are always open for such, but again, I think we not only focusing on that because we don't also want to flood the market with all these products. Again, we are open to anything that's supporting for the recovery, but yeah, we cannot just focus on that.
Okay, so this question.
Add on to that.
Yes,
so basically, I think this is an example of what we have done over the past few months is supporting SMEs who are selling masks and APD, personal protective equipment, to regional governments actually. So we're working with the regional governments, for example, Pemprov Jabar, Pemprov Bali, Pemprov Jawa Timur. A lot of the SMEs are now selling masks to these Pemprov, and procurement below 50 million are actually done through an online procurement platform. So I think this is a new innovation that has been introduced by the regional government. The regional government of Jabar, Jateng, Jatim, Bali, as I mentioned, those are the 4 key regional governments that have implemented this. And actually, fintech lenders such as Investri are embedded into these pengadaan online. And so we see a lot of these small SMEs providing masks, selling masks for 50 million rupiah, 20 million rupiah, as low as that. So it's a way for SMEs to recover the business and gives them I would say credit-worthy buyer in terms of Pemprov. Obviously, they have funds, and so this is how we are supporting these type of segments. Apart from that, there are also big sizable contracts given by Indonesian government. I think if you look at the numbers, despite the recession, government is still spending. So I think this is an opportunity where fintech lenders can actually play a role in supporting suppliers of these medical equipments or medical supplies to the government.
Wow. Okay, so a lot of comments and inputs from the participants why we are using English because this is an international event. And then bagi Bapak Ibu, mohon kalau misalnya memang belum ada fitur interpretation di dalam Zoom-nya, berarti memang harus di-download ulang lagi untuk mendapatkan versi yang terbaru. Jadi nanti ada tab-nya tuh sebelah Q&A box. itu ada tab interpretation, dan ketika diklik itu bisa diterjemahkan apa yang sedang dibahas pada saat ini. We want to make it very international because this is a global issue. This is an Indonesian topic, but it's a global issue, and the audience is not only Indonesian. So because it's now it's digitization, so you need to upgrade your software. Basically, that's what we need to do. Yes, exactly. No stealing. Okay, this question is for the gentlemen, all the speakers, from Santi Samdasani from ASEAN International Advocacy and Consultancy. What are the 3 things you would recommend to be incorporated in the future fintech policy? Mungkin dari Mas Ronald. You can start first, Mas Ronald, and then Mas Herman.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. What are the things you would recommend to be incorporated in the policy? Well, I guess it's a very tough question. This is highly related to our regulators. But again, from my end, I guess I'll be answering from the Sharia fintech perspective. We are few challenges mentioned at the moment, such as the limited infrastructure. But again, there are few positive and good initiative from the government, such as the merge of the 3 national Sharia banks. I guess that initiative will change and affect the roadmap of this Sharia fintech entirely and more significantly. And of course, we are seeing that the government, having this approach not only bottoms up but also top down approach, that the government playing more roles such as incorporating this KNEKS and also the vice president itself more actively involved to make sure that the growth of Sharia economy will grow. I think this will bring more insight for the regulators on making all these policies.
Mas Herman?
Yeah, I think from me, one of the key success factor of the digitalization or e-commerce penetration in Indonesia is the financial enablement part, right? Either giving the financial enablement to the merchant and giving financial enablement to the customer as well. I think OJK, together with the rest of the government, has been really helping a lot on that. I think the alternative credit scoring task force working group that's actually being supported by the OJK is really a good initiative by the government. I think we should continue pushing forward. I think it's not only just a matter of replacing the traditional way of doing credit scoring. It's not, but it's about how we can actually get a better data point, more data point to enable people like Pak Adrian, right, to be able to have a more peaceful sleep at night, to know that their investment is really targeted to the right person.
Okay, Mas Adrian?
Okay, so maybe some 3 points in terms of the overarching regulation. And why I'm saying this because we're also looking at policies, regulations related to fintech, not only in Indonesia, but also ASEAN, as we have in Thailand, as we have operations in Thailand and Philippines as well. But I think, as the industry develops, it is maturing as we see. It's been 5 years since fintech lending has been established in terms of regulation. I think 3 key areas. Number 1, I think I go back to what was mentioned in the Bali Fintech Agenda during the World Economic Forum about 2 years ago. Feels like ages, but just recently, it's about principle-based. I think it's always important that fintech regulation has to be principle-based rather than rule-based. I think that is a consistent policy that needs to be adhered to or supported. Number 2, consumer protection and the role of association that supports market conduct in terms of regulation to enhance and ensure that the consumer protection is upheld in terms of access to data, transparency of information, disputes and resolution. I think that's the role of an association, because this industry moves so fast, and whether regulators can keep up, and that is where the key role of association, for example, AFTEC, AFPI, as well as AFSI plays a critical role And I think Indonesia is one of the leading market conduct in terms of the association compared to the other countries that I see firsthand, as opposed to Thailand as well as the Philippines. So I think this is an advantage for us, having this market conduct to ensure customer protection. And third, it comes to collaboration. I think over the past few years, when a lot of us started a while back, the question was always, fintech is going to be a competitor for banks,
Right.
or fintech will be competing with the banks. I think what we see more and more is actually the other way around. It's more of collaboration. So I think the regulation has to really try to fill in how do banks and fintech collaborate, how fintech can actually work closely with banks as well, because banks, they have the in terms of the rules, regulation, they have the network, they have the customer base, they have the trust. So I think having a collaborative regulation in where banks and fintech can work closely, I think that would be an important step that the regulation needs to look into. And so I think both, if you have banks and fintech with obviously the technology, alternative credit scoring, banks with the network, with the size, it's a means to accelerate financial inclusion in Indonesia. And I think that's why most of us are here is how do we use technology to accelerate financial inclusion? I think that remains the mission.
Right. Pakar, silakan.
Yeah, thank you. So before lay out the three items that I do believe it's really important yet to grow this industry further. I think we all need to be very thankful and grateful to the Pak Jokowi's administration and BI and OJK. I think what we are seeing right now, that we are seeing that the Indonesia fintech industry is growing very significantly. I think it's the direct impact of the progressive vision and regulation already adopted by this administration, right? And on the three options, I think first I want to emphasize what Pak Adrian just said. And in my understanding, I think BI and OJK start to adopt the shift from the principle-based and to rule-based regulation, and I think that would be very positive, considering that the technology in this industry is growing very fast, and I think the principle-based regulation would create a more agile regulation, in which I think it's really important to grow this industry further. And secondly, considering the nature of this industry can maybe a bit different to the conventional financial industry. So if we see the fintech industry is very collaborative and integrated, right? So for instance, even an e-commerce platform like Tokopedia collaborating with the investment like Bareksa, right? So I think we cannot imagine maybe like Hypermart and then they sell mutual funds. It's not the case, right? But this is what we are seeing. E-commerce like Tokopedia now selling mutual funds, and also maybe later on selling bonds. So, but the problem is, we need a regulation that is more integrative, right? And because the problem is, fintech area in Indonesia is regulated separately, right? Maybe one area falls under regulator A, and then another area will be supervised by regulator B. So if we don't adopt a more integrated approach, usually regulator A will be reluctant to approve this collaboration between platform A and platform B, because platform B would create some sort of the risk exposure to regulator A, even though let me give you a concrete example how this collaboration really important. So Bareksa is collaborating with Tokopedia to sell mutual funds, and then we can see that the impact is really positive to to deepen the mutual fund penetration in Indonesia.
Mm.
So I think this is really important to to have our regulators to embrace a more integrated approach. And lastly, I think again, this industry is at this very early stage, right? And we all understand, and I think we are all very supportive that risk mitigation is really important. Consumer protection is really important, but I think we need to appeal to all the regulators. I think we need to balance between this risk mitigation, and maybe we need even a more progressive approach to
Right.
adjust more our regulation, because I believe that we can still unlock more opportunities that we've seen in other economies that not is happening yet in Indonesia. So I think balancing between the how we can adopt more progressive approach in the fintech regulation and the risk mitigation. I think the my third key suggestion.
Mm.
Thank you.
Interesting, interesting. Because I would like to ask you also about the collaboration, but now you're already shared the example of what is going on right now. But I guess to other speakers, to Mas Herman, Mas Ronald, Mas Adrian juga, we talk a lot about like collab, especially during the pandemic. How important sih for like fintech industries to do this collaboration? Whether is it only because of the crisis, or do you see it as something that is long term, sustainable for your business? Yes.
Yeah, let me try to answer that.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. That is our business model actually.
Mm.
We partner with ecosystems. I think we see the importance of ecosystem, especially if you are looking at SMEs, for example, because the information or the data provided through the ecosystem on the SME is actually very visible. As also already mentioned by Herman, you are able to get more visibility through the ecosystem. And obviously, as a business, we need to manage between the growth as well as the risk, right? And having worked closely with digital ecosystems, for example, you're able to validate the data. So it's obviously more of robust data information for your credit scoring, for your risk management. Secondly, it's also a more cheaper way to acquire customers. So it's a lower cost of acquisition. And as a fintech company, profitability has to be within your roadmap.
Right.
So I think the world has changed, especially if you talk about venture capital investment. Then obviously profitability is key for any tech company, and so having a low cost of acquisition is key. And third, I think it goes to bringing synergy to your ecosystem partner, because the ecosystem is able to also provide, let's say, financial services such as payments, lending to their SMEs or their customers also. So I think we're seeing more and more of this collaboration. I think it also comes back to the Indonesian culture of gotong royong.
Right,
it's very
right,
relevant,
yeah.
and we see each other because this is still an early stage that you will see more and more collaboration rather than competition. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of banks have also realized this. There is a strong collaboration with big banks. The government banks, state-owned banks are now working closely with fintech companies and even investing in fintech companies as part of this increased collaboration effort.
Mas Ronald, Mas Herman?
Yeah, I think from my side, I really agree with what Pak Adrian basically said, right? I think this is where Indonesia, we have like the gotong royong or togetherness type of a spirit that I think is really, really strong, not only during pandemic, but I think you're this with the same. I think it's going to be the same with everyone, that our business model requires everybody to play together. There is no way one person to be able to solve this by itself, right? Let me give an example. For example, I think in terms of the user, right, in terms of the customer, we need to actually we have the responsibility to help increasing awareness, financial awareness, increasing financial literacy, financial adoption, and how they can actually start trusting and going into the financial the financial product. I think from the marketplace, either that's going to be digital or traditional, right?
Yeah.
How we can actually enable, we need their help to actually expose some of our financial enablement to actually help their merchant, their customers, and everything. For our lending partner, banks, traditional lending partners, digital lending partners, how we can actually help them in basically dispersing money faster, sooner, cheaper, and more accurate, right? From the fintech perspective, right? Fintech technology, right? How we can basically continue accelerating ourselves using advanced technology that we have, machine learning, AI, big data, all of the stuff that we mentioned, to basically accelerate the financial adoption in Indonesia. For the government itself, I think how we can basically leverage our government to actually help the market to actually to increase this financial adoption through better regulatory law and everything else. So I think when you look at the whole thing, I think there are many other maybe sectors that I didn't mention, but when we basically look at the pieces like that, there is no way one person or one entity will be able to solve it ourselves. We need to actually work with one another.
Yeah, I may on a bit from the two speakers. For me, it's obvious the digital business is all very relevant to economic sharing, right? Economic sharing, that means we have to collaborate, right? And
Right.
of course, we are in this together, right? I think that's the only way to come out strong after that.
Okay. So I would like to ask the final question from all of you, since we are at the end of our session, starting with you, Pak Kar, and then Mas Ronald, Mas Herman, and then Mas Adrian, you can conclude. We're talking about get up and stand up for economic recovery from your industry, which is fintech. Your position right now, already get up, already stand up, and what is your position if we're talking about 3 months from now, which is a new year? Where will you be then? Silakan, Pak Kar.
Okay, very short from me. I think it's a classic and vintage concept that financial technology and digital technology become enabler for the conventional business, right? I think it's a classic and vintage concept. But I think in Indonesia there is a very promising indication that has proven already that we see the financial technology platform can be utilized not only as a business tool, not only as a commercial tool, but also can be utilized as an economic development tool.
Right.
So like what we've been seeing in Prakerja. So I think this is would be really important for our economic development, in the future. And I think all the fintech companies and in all the industry, I think would be really happy, would be really glad, to work together with the Indonesian government, and then how we can contribute to this our national, economic recovery to get out from the pandemic. Thank you.
Get up, stand up stronger. Mas Ronald, silakan.
Yeah, maybe very bit from my end. Basically, I feel COVID is an eye opener for everybody now. To see that really the digital business is something that can really, help the recovery, etc. But at the same time, it also become a filter for those who are surviving. Right, all these investors are waiting to see who are the survivor and push them to grow bigger. So everybody that in this keep strong together.
Mas Herman?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a combination of get up and stand up. I think the future is bright. I think Pak Kar and Pak Ronald already mentioned this. I just want to say that, the future is bright, even though it seems that right now the pandemic is kind of interesting, but always trust that there is always the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think this is a moment where we stand up together, gotong royong bareng-bareng. And I think when we are doing it together, I think the future is bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Adrian.
Okay, I would say get up, stand up, and jump. So we need to rebound, obviously, not just stand up, but also to rebound, and hopefully, the fintech industry can become a locomotive for the recovery. I think, if I look back 5 years ago when we, some of us started, I think it's very it's an important milestone for the industry. Where we are right now, and the fact that we are not only thinking about developing the business, but also how the industry can play a very direct role in the economic recovery of Indonesia. And I think we are a fintech company. We are innovative. We are fast. We are agile. So I think we are at the forefront to become this locomotive for recovery for small businesses in Indonesia. And I think, the government should think out of the box because in this situation, we have never seen a pandemic such as this. So need out of the box thinking, need creativity, need innovation. And I think that is where we are as digital native in this industry. And I think we do have the potential to fully support this recovery for the SMEs of Indonesia. Thank you.
Get up, stand up, and rebound. Thank you, Mas Adrian, Mas Herman, Pakar, Mas Ronald. Thank you so much for all the speakers, for the insightful and fruitful discussion. Hopefully, it will bring more benefit to all the participants. 1,100 participants and counting are joining us right now. Thank you so much for having us. And acara saya kembalikan to Mbak Tia. Silakan, Mbak Tia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.